Well, folks, it finally happened. Ke'Bryan Hayes won the illustrious Gold Glove award in the National League at third base, which is fun because we're also about to enter a very fun period of the offseason with free agency opening pretty soon. And starting pitching is going to be on the docket for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I think it's time we talk about it here on Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast, bringing you news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And as usual on Mondays, I'm joined by my coffee-drinking duo partner over here, Gary Morgan. Gary, I will say right now, my house is probably about as cold as it is in Pittsburgh right now because my heat's not working. So having a great time over here, but there was some heat that we saw last night. And I think that a lot of people, when they tuned into ESPN or were on Twitter to see the Rawlings Gold Glove Award announcements, a lot of us had the expectation that Ke'Bryan Hayes was going to win the award, Gary. For some reason, I can't say the word award today unless I'd have to fully pronunciate it. But he wins it anyway. I still think there was that little sliver of doubt there. Are they actually going to give it to him this time? Is it finally going to happen?
Yeah.
And it does. And by the way, folks, you can also find links to vote for him to win the Platinum Glove, which is something you should all go and do. But I really think the takeaway from this now is that you're starting to see with this young core that the Pirates are building that there's some national recognition a little bit now with this award for Ke'Bryan Hayes. What were your immediate thoughts on him winning other than he should have won it last year?
I mean, yeah, that was my first thought is this probably shouldn't be his first. But happy for him, obviously. He's worked his entire career for this, and he certainly makes it look easy. It was getting to the point where if they didn't give it to him, I don't know how they could have defended the award being about the subject at hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad they did the right thing here. I think it probably sets up a good long stretch of him winning it. You know, that they tend to like to do that sort of thing. They find somebody and let them win it and stick with them. So
yeah.
Good chance he'll just hold on to it now, providing that his bat keeps him in the conversation. As sad as that is, it shouldn't be part of the discussion, but it is. I think by far and away, 21 defensive runs saved at third base is just sick.
Yeah.
So
insane.
He earned it.
And then you look at the 17 outs above average, the 984 fielding percentage. He was in the 99th percentile in outs above average. It was an award that he was destined to win. And like you said, this is something that going back to his minor league days, folks, this is a award that he wanted to win. This is something that he's had on his personal career milestones to get to this point. And I did see a lot of talk yesterday about this too, that Hayes, obviously, I think you're right. He's going to probably continue to win the award as long as he stays healthy. And sadly, if his offense keeps up, because for some reason we dictate a defensive award on offensive ability, which is why he didn't win it last year. And one thing I also found interesting too about this year's voting before I move on to my next point, I know that last year kind of the conversation that was going on was, oh, well, the Pirates weren't good. Well, Brenton Doyle also won a Gold Glove in center field and played for the Colorado Rockies. Now, last year, that probably wouldn't have been the case. It just kind of changes every single year. I don't know why.
I don't know that the Gold Glove conversation tends to run into that same territory where you start freaking out about whether the team was good or not.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's an MVP conversation.
Oh, 100%.
You know, I don't – it's hard to give an MVP to somebody that was on a really bad team.
Well,
Borderline.
it's probably going to happen. It's probably going to happen this year in the American League.
Well, I'm saying but those teams were at least in the conversation for a while, right?
Yeah.
So when you're like 100-loss team though, or whatever, you're not going to win any kind of MVP award. You can't give that and be serious about the award. You just can't. But the Gold Glove, that's not what it should be about.
No.
Yeah.
It should just be about how good was this player defensively? Where did he rank among advanced analytics on it? How good did he play the position?
Yeah.
And you mentioned it with Ke'Bryan Hayes as well. How easy does he make these plays look? I mean, there's plays that we're just, as Pirates fans, watching him all the time. I feel like we're so accustomed to him just making them look easy that it's like, oh, that's an easy ground ball. But then you watch any other player do this, and it's like, I mean, they struggle with it. And you would have any other fan base see this, that unless it's San Diego or St. Louis or one of those teams that also has a phenomenal third baseman. But he just makes the routine stuff look easy. Now, I do think it's interesting with him winning the Gold Glove and potentially going on a run. It made me think, is there possibly another Gold Glove player on this team already? I mean, it's very possible that Jared Triolo, if he can find a way to bounce around and have a very good defensive season, is he a guy that could potentially win a Gold Glove as well for the Pirates?
I think he's capable of winning a Gold Glove at some point in his career, whether he latches on someplace or just wins the utility award that they just launched a couple of years ago. But I certainly think Jared Triolo has that type of talent. I don't think it's unfathomable that there's several of them. I think Endy could come along to that degree. He's got that kind of arm where he could throw guys out and pick up something like that. Anybody that's got something plus can do that sort of thing. O'Neal Cruz has that plus range, and if he reins in that plus arm and doesn't make a ton of errors, he could be in a conversation like that. Anybody that has the ability for the exceptional is one of those that's capable.
Yeah, and I think, again, we can agree, though, that Ke'Bryan Hayes is probably going to have a stranglehold on this position, again, as long as he stays healthy and as long as the bat's there, too, which, again, it makes you kind of cringe every time you say it because of what we're talking about. But at the
same time, Ethan, let's play it out. Let's say, because we all say that, right? Mm-hmm. We all say, oh, that's crap. It shouldn't have anything to do with the bat. I agree. Let's say, God forbid, O'Neal Cruz can't play for whatever reason. Alika Williams winds up being the starting shortstop for the Pirates. He hits 195 and, but no errors, unbelievable range, best shortstop in the league, bar none, absolutely 100%. Nobody could argue with it. He's Ozzie Smith reincarnate. Does he win the Gold Glove with that bat? Do you want that as a baseball fan?
No.
Probably not, right?
No.
So, I mean, I think what we can really say is like, hey, within reason, let's make this about the glove. That's
like
all.
I think you got to be at least probably in the 230 to 240 range, I would say. Like I feel, and again, it's something that's very annoying to talk about. But you could even use the analogy from basketball that when you're on the all-defensive team in basketball, there's a little bit of an expectation that you at least need to be averaging like 10 points a game while also playing very good defense on the other side of the court. And right. It's stuff that just happens that way. It is what it is. Same thing with the Silver Slugger Award, even though that's drastically changed and the Pirates didn't win any of those. But Gary, is it almost time for the Pirates to potentially win the offseason? All throughout this week with free agent signings, the Pirates might make one, so that'll throw my entire schedule out of whack. But if they don't, we're going to be talking about starting pitching today, and then we're going to be talking about other areas of focus and need for the Pittsburgh Pirates and what is out there and what's available. But before we do that, folks, we're going to talk about FanDuel. Okay, you're supposed to show that. There we go. I was going to say it's supposed to show that. And guess what? FanDuel will show you the money, folks, if you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, because the NFL season is at its halfway point, and you can score early with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That is $150 if your team wins. For example, if the Dolphins are playing a team that has a winning record, bet the money line on the other team and you could win $150 in bonus bets. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season, because FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL and an official sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. And we are back here for segment 2 on November 6th. By the way, Gary, what in the world? October just flew away. Now we're already 6 days into November. Mariah Carey's music is hitting and playing already. People have Christmas decorations down here out in their front yard. We're not even at Thanksgiving yet, okay? Let's calm the brakes down a little bit.
I have my decorations up already, Ethan. I apologize. My wife is opening a restaurant, and she's not going to be around much for the holidays, so we wanted to get them up and let her enjoy them for a minute before she started.
To which I will say, I do think the circumstances and like your situation does dictate, okay, when do you put them up? When do you do it? For me, I mean, I'm just going to put them up on December 1st. I'll just pinpoint that day. That's when they'll go up, or the day after Thanksgiving. My mom always had the rule, shout out Mom if you're listening, she always had the rule that Christmas doesn't start until Santa Claus shows up in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. That was always her rule. I'm like, okay, that's cool and dandy and all, but I'm ready to go watch football now. But this is a baseball podcast, not a Christmas debate decoration podcast.
Not yet. It'll devolve into that.
It'll devolve into that. Yeah, it'll get back to that probably here in a minute. But as far as decorations and presents go, free agency almost is here. Yeah. And we've talked about it ad nauseum for months, about the Pirates needing probably a first baseman, probably starting pitching, maybe a right fielder, maybe a veteran second baseman if you want to go that route. Now the time for that is, okay, you've seen the opt-outs. You've seen the club options be declined. You've seen guys elect free agency, guys placed on waivers. We've seen so much of that already, and nobody's even signed with anybody yet. So you look up and down this wonderful website called Spot Track. Love Spot Track, by the way. You all should use it. It's a very, very good website to use. The starting pitching market is very interesting to me, because I saw you tweet about it, about Marcus Stroman opting out of his contract and possibly expecting a lot of money out of this. But when you look up and down at what the market values of these players are on Spot Track, there are 9 pitchers with an estimated market value above Marcus Stroman. Obviously, you know the likes of Clayton Kershaw, who just announced that he had to have surgery, so he probably won't be back until July. Aaron Nola, won't mention the third guy. Blake Snell, Eduardo Rodriguez, Sonny Gray, Jordan Montgomery, Michael Wacha, Charlie Morton, Mike Clevenger, Marcus Stroman. I mean, it's a loaded pitching free agent class. But when it pertains to the Pirates, I think it's tough for me to figure out how high they're going to go, like in terms of all this stuff. Do you think, Gary, that it's going to end up being more of they wait for some of these top guys to go so that that market can be what it is? Or do you think they pounce early on a guy and show interest early on and try to get it done at their price range?
Well, I guess that depends on how you want to have conversations about what they should do in free agency this offseason, because I can tell you what I think or expect or my past pain tells me to believe is going to happen. I can tell you what a GM that says we're going for the playoffs should do, right?
Yeah.
They should go and get Jordan Montgomery, or they should go and get Eduardo Rodriguez. They need a starting lefty.
Yes.
One way or another. And to me, that solves a problem for a few years. James Paxton, you could even see them slip down to. So they have somebody in their price range.
Mm-hmm.
We could find somebody in that $10 to $15 million range. I know Eduardo Rodriguez and Jordan Montgomery are going to be more than that. I know, being a Pirates fan, it's unlikely. But I think we just let them off the hook over and over again by forecasting how much is too much before we even get to this point. It shouldn't be that way. And I don't want to give them that grace this year. I really don't.
No. And you were mentioning lefties, and there is a name out there that I do think gets lost in the fold just a little bit. And some people might look at him and say, oh, he's a little too old for what we're looking for. 32 years of age, 32 and a half to be specific. He's in the lower tier of this. So I would say he's not like bottom of the barrel lower tier, but it's a guy who has had success before, kind of got overshadowed on the team that just won the World Series because he did have a somewhat down year. But the Pirates have been known, folks, over the last 3 years to kind of reclaim players' careers. That's something they've done very well. And I'm talking about Martin Perez. He's an unrestricted free agent. His estimated market value is $10 million a year. He's a left-handed pitcher that could come in. You're not going to have super lofty expectations for him, but I think the expectations would be there for like, hey, you're our left-handed starter. And obviously, I'm saying this as a person that is all in on the Pirates getting Eduardo Rodriguez. That is something that I want to happen. But his market is going to be crazy. And are the Pirates going to get into a bidding war with a guy who has an estimated annual value of $20 million a year? Probably not. Perez, on the other hand, again, a little bit older, could still sign him to a 2-year deal. You could still look into getting that bona fide lefty that you want. And albeit, again, that he didn't have the greatest 2023, he has shown in his career in the past that he can be a very good pitcher, something the Pirates, again, have done a pretty good job at over the last 3 years.
Sure. And I mean, I think the lefty is paramount. That's why I focus on it so much. I agree 100%. Even Alex Wood would be a decent swing here, you know, and I think he's a guy that you could have really cheap on a reclamation project basis. He really had a terrible season last year, but 32 years old, you can expect there's a little more gas in the tank there for a couple of years. Just like to get somebody in place that has some experience from the left side. Eduardo Rodriguez would be amazing. But there are so many options this year that have some degree of pedigree. There is no excuse for missing.
No.
They need 2 of them. They need to get 2 that you know you can count on. That's the requirement here.
Yeah.
I just think that I'm done going, maybe we could get Michael Lorenzen and sign him for 4 years. And no. Yeah. I mean, if you do that, cool. Because he can work out in the bullpen too, but give me more.
Yeah, it's like you look at the other names that Pirates fans would probably be more accustomed in past years to what the Pirates would probably be doing. You look at Julio Teheran, Brad Keller, Zach Davies, Carlos Carrasco, Lance Lynn, Wade Miley. Those are the guys that I think a lot of people are kind of scared that's what they're going to go do. But I would not look in the Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery area of things. I just wouldn't. Those 2 are going to get crazy contracts probably from some big market team and overpay, and it's fine.
I think Rodriguez has a shot to get more than Montgomery.
I also do too. And that's where I find it interesting in the question that I asked you earlier is, do the Pirates wait for the market to set itself? Because I don't know if you want to, because for us, there's 2 sides to that coin for what I'm speaking about. Is the first side is you try to go show interest in a guy immediately. There might be interest elsewhere, but you might be the first team to contact them, give them a contract. Here's what we want to offer you.
Yeah.
The other side of that coin is, as you probably know better than me, is if you wait for the market to set itself and let's say Rodriguez doesn't sign before Montgomery and Montgomery gets 4 years, $80 million. Well, Eduardo Rodriguez is going to want something in that camp too. And I think that's where it's a really tough balance is do you go and offer a contract now that might be a little bit less than he would want initially, or do you wait and sign him to something around that price range that he's going to want, but then eventually probably be in a bidding war with a bunch of teams?
I don't know the right answer here. I don't think that that's even what you're looking for.
No.
I think what you're saying makes sense. I don't know which way is best here. I will say, from an internal perspective, they better wrap up Keller before he starts seeing some of these numbers flying around for guys that they're bringing in here to be his contemporary. Because I have the feeling no matter what they sign, Keller's probably going to outshine them for the most part. And boy, I wouldn't want to be paying him $6 million. No. I'm just saying I'd get that extension done, and then I'd go hit the market hard. If that means the market's set before I get there, hey, come on.
So be it.
It was going to be anyway.
Well, yeah, and so be it at that point as well, because when you look at Mitch Keller, he's your guy right now. And I think that's even an expectation that you have to go into a meeting with any of these pitchers and say that, hey, that's our guy over there. We also have the number 1 overall pick in Paul Skeens, who's a generational pitching talent coming on the way. So we're signing you to create a rotation that is potentially top 5 in the National League at that point when you're factoring in all of the other things. And for Keller even too, I agree 100%. At some point, Mitch Keller is going to look at these deals that are being signed and say, hey, like I've been here already. I've been here for this a lot amount of time. I'm an all-star on your team already.
And like, the closer you get to that end of the road where you know free agency is coming, the more appealing it is to just wait for it.
Yep.
And I'm just saying I think now's the time. Get it done while you can and move on before you start bringing in competitors. That's all.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And then you look at, like, just in general, how this is going to continue to go throughout the offseason. I was asking myself, really, but when free agency starts. So I'm going to search that while I'm with everybody, but keep talking about what I was going to say. I would even argue, and I talked about this as well with Mitch Keller, I would argue that that's almost an offseason acquisition in its own self if you extend Mitch Keller. Kind of like when the Pirates extended Brian Reynolds. It was almost like their big free agent signing. And I say that from the standpoint that every time that Mitch Keller goes out there without an extended contract and pitches well, he gets more expensive. He just does. He's just going to continue to get more expensive. He's going to continue to be that guy where if he makes the All-Star game again, at some point we talk about price ranges, Gary, and I think at that point, if Keller was to come out next year without an extension through the first half of the year and have another all-star first half like he did in 2023, it gets really tough for the Pirates to bring him back.
Sure. Or he comes out in May and blows out his elbow and has Tommy John, and then they look brilliant for not doing it. And it's a risk every single time. As a fan, it's super easy for me to say, wrap him up. I think they should. I think they can get it done affordably now.
So do
Just do it. On the other hand, we don't know everything that goes into everything.
No.
And I just would tell everybody to look back just a couple days when we all saw that Angel Perdomo had been waived. And I think there was an initial gut reaction from everybody that this team has no idea what they're doing. We saw him. He was a good pitcher, right? Even when I wrote about it the next day after having thought about it, I was like, it doesn't make any sense unless there's some kind of injury, right? Like there has to be something. We don't know. That day, it can't come out that, he had Tommy John surgery. Maybe the team's not stupid all the time.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing on occasion, I would say, but this one from the outside looking in, the whole timeline doesn't work if you don't sign Keller. That's all I can really say.
No, and that timeline is pressing along pretty quickly. Now, it does appear that today is the first day free agents can sign with new teams today, which I find very interesting because before we started recording, I asked you about that, and we didn't know if it was today or tomorrow. Usually you would already kind of hear little crumbs being thrown around about where a player might end up or what his market value is, and we haven't really heard anything yet. And it is 10:30 in the morning at the time of recording as I'm currently saying this. So, I mean, there is possibly time that, these teams are going to take their time.
But I think the winter meetings, too, will usually jumpstart that drastically. So, we'll see what happens. I would expect it to pick up throughout the day, just a few little droplets.
A few little nuggets.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll be on top of it. I'm sure Gary will be on top of it. I'll be on top of it. Everybody on Pirates Twitter will be on top of it. And we'll all have our different opinions, and we'll all have fun with it, whatever happens here on the Locked On Pirates podcast, because it's our Monday show with Gary Morgan. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. For Gary, by the way, he, of course, is going to probably have 5 thoughts at 5, which if there's some news between now and then, it could change a little bit, but you never really know what's going to happen there. You can also find some of my writing work on Inside the Bucks Basement with Gary Morgan. I was also on the we're going to take a second before I mess this up. It's the Double Play podcast, right?
412 Double Play podcast.
412 Double Play podcast. You can find me on that today as well, where we talked about Ke'Bryan Hayes a little bit, but I think he updated the audio version with Hayes winning it last night. We talked all about free agency. He got to hear about all of my fun stuff about Eduardo Rodriguez and what I think they're going to do in the offseason and why I think Reed Detmers would be a good trade target. But we'll talk about that another day, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday. My name's Ethan. That's Gary. We'll see you on the flip side.